Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. We're going to have Councilwoman Redfern lead us in prayer, and I ask everyone please stand for the pledge.
Father God, thank you so much for this evening. I thank you, Lord, that we live in a country of freedom. I ask, Father God, that you do not take your hand off of our nation. I ask, Father God, that you continue to watch over our city. You keep us good, you keep us clean, and you keep us protected. And I thank you, Lord, for our country again. I ask that you continue to keep us on the right path. I ask that you continue to pray for peace for our people. And I ask that you shower us all with love in the next couple of months. I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, again, thank you all for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. First item on the agenda is to consider approval of the October 15, 2024 minutes. Council, if we've had a chance to review the minutes, please, floor is open for motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have Councilmember Hagman with the motion, second by Councilwoman, I'm sorry, excuse me. Second by Councilwoman Spruill. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right, the vote is unanimous. We'll now close item 1 on the agenda. Item 2 is our public comments. The City Council welcomes citizens' participation and comments at all council meetings. Citizen comments are limited to 2 minutes out of respect for everyone's time. The council is not permitted to respond to your comments. The Texas Open Meetings Act requires that topics of discussion, deliberation be posted on an agenda not less than 72 hours in advance of council meetings. If your comments relate to a topic that is on the agenda, the council will discuss the topic on the agenda at the time that the topic is discussed and deliberated. If we have anyone at this time that would like to come up and speak, please do so and state your name.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Steve Bolster. My address is 1497 CR 3240, Mount Pleasant, phone number 903-305-5408. I'm before you on behalf of myself and Holly Parker, who can't be here because she's volunteering for elections. Between the two of us, we've requested 3 FOIAs from the EDC. I have a thumb drive for each of you with all the data we received. My FOIA focused on performance agreements. You will find that there are agreements that the City Council approved, and then in as little as 2 months later, there were amendments made by the EDC to forgive money owed, change agreements, but the City Council was never notified. And then later, the EDC comes to you looking for tax breaks, and you didn't even know the money was forgiven. Additionally, there hasn't been a net new business in the city or county, and if we continue this trend, Mount Pleasant and Titus County will be in grave financial trouble. On top of that, Holly Parker submitted 2 FOIA requests, one focusing on EDC expenses. You'll see in the data on the thumb drive, we were surprised that all we received were credit card statements, no expense reports, no itemized receipts. We also still did not have any information on the meetings that occur. But the receipts are for very questionable expenses that don't look business appropriate. I met with Candace Webster to ask why we didn't get any expense receipts. She said that she put the receipts all together and sent them in one single email with the credit card statements all to Nathan Tafoya. These receipts were removed before the FOIA response was provided to us. Only after I sent an email to our interim city manager to follow up did the EDC lawyer, Jeff Moore, stir himself to send over receipts. Now, I'm not a lawyer myself, but I do know that it's a violation of the Texas Open Records Act and a gross breach of public trust. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Do we have anyone else at this time? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Casey Coleman. My address is 1497 County Road 3240, Mount Pleasant. I served as a senior executive in the U.S. government for 12 years, where I was the Chief Information Officer for the U.S. General Services Administration. As CIO, I had a budget of $650 million annually and a staff of 2,000 people. I'm an expert on government ethics and expected standards of behavior for government employee performance and conduct. To distinguish poor job performance is when a person isn't doing a good job or getting the results we're paying them for. Poor conduct is when someone is lying, cheating, or stealing on the job. It could also be when they're doing something like having an affair with a subordinate. I'm also very knowledgeable regarding FOIAs, the Freedom of Information Act, and the legal responsibility of public servants to respond to FOIA requests honestly and fully. As a former government official, I had to respond to many FOIA requests. We hold our public servants to a high bar, as we should, because they are using our tax dollars. However, that standard, unfortunately, is not being met here. Nathan DeFoya has deliberately withheld information in response to a lawful inquiry, which alone is grounds for termination for cause. It also appears that he has misused his expense account for personal expenses, things like floral deliveries, CVS charges, TJ Maxx purchases, and personal meals. These are conduct violations. And in 6 years of being the highest paid person in the city, he has not brought in any new businesses. Finally, I think we should look at the EDC trustees. He has been giving gift cards to the trustees, which is generally considered inappropriate for people who have a fiduciary responsibility for overseeing this work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have anyone else at this time? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comments section and move on to item 3. Item 3 is consider resolution of 2024-16 approving the tax roll and the tax levy.
Good evening. I'm Shirley Dickerson with Titus County Appraisal District. I'm the chief appraiser and tax assessor collector for the cities and the school districts in the county. I'm here tonight just to get the approval of the tax roll, levy roll. This just represents what you can expect in taxes this year by taking our certified taxable values and putting it with your tax rate to come up with tax levy of $5,750,029.20.
Okay, thank you. Council, the floor is open for any questions.
Ms. Dixon, how much increase was there in value? Do you know off the top of your head from last year to this year?
It was about an 8% increase overall.
Any further questions, council? Floor is open for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the tax roll and tax levy resolution 2024-16.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made by Councilmember Hageman, second by Councilmember Spruill. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just for a quick moment, I just wanted to say thank you to Shirley. We had interim finance directors working with us as we went through the budget and trying to figure out the revenue, and you have just been great, and it's great to have you here with us, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. We'll go on, close item 3 and move on to item 4. Item 4 is to consider pay request number 6 to Snyder Electric for work on the meter replacement project. Mr. Razor.
Mayor and Council, this is pay request number 6 for Snyder Electric for the water meter replacement project. So this is for $477,816.52. And between September 21st and October 23rd, they replaced 811 3/4 inch meters, 106 1-inch meters, and 108 2-inch meters. Total meter replacement to date is 4,854. And then we're still evaluating the service lines. That's still going on for the lead and copper. And Mr. Messenbrick is here to do a short presentation to just kind of get us up to date where we're at. So original construction is $2,856,630. Billing to date so far is $1,854,234.27. The remaining contract is $1,002,395.73. So again, this is for payment number 6, $477,816.52. Thank you.
You have a presentation?
Mayor, Council, Ms. Nyhoff. My name is Craig Messenbrink with Schneider Electric. I have the program manager for this project. I have with me Keith Kaiser, the project manager, and we just wanted to give you a quick update. Everything that Anthony is saying month to month gives you good progress push on this, but I wanted to, now that we're getting close to the end of the project, I wanted to talk a little bit about the online tool and how that can help the citizens. This is what Anthony just showed relative to the pay app in the invoice number 6 and in the breakdown of the number of meters, a little over 6,000 meters in total. We're about 80%, 82% complete with that. Let's see. Here's a map showing in red where everything where we've been working to date, and some of the gaps that are left in that last 20%. But give you an indication of where in the city the meters are being replaced. A quick update on the lead and copper. We've made the first report to the TCEQ, and good news, no lead has been found through 80% of the meter replacement project, so that's good. That we're working with Anthony on the notifications and notification updates as we roll forward towards completion. I wanted to introduce this my water advisor application and portal. We've been delaying this in talking with Anthony and team until we had a substantial amount of the meters replaced. I know some citizens are already downloading the application or going online and linking their account to the new smart meter. To me, this was one of the things that was exciting about this process in the beginning, not only to accurately measure all the water, but to give the citizens the ability to track not only monthly, weekly, daily, and even hourly trends. You can set up notifications that would say if the meter shows 24-hour a day, even a trickle, but a 24-hour a day, it would identify leaks and can send you notifications or texts. So this is a great tool that's going to enable everybody to not only track when and how they're using the water, but also to maybe prevent undue costs if there is a leak. So there's go online. The link to this water guide is on the city's website, and so I think it's a user-friendly application. But going on to the portal is pretty easy as well, and so and if there's any questions, they can download the guide. That's it.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I do want to say after that, we did have a few people that tried to download the app on their phone, and it wouldn't work. So what we've done, we've contacted Master Meter. They are updating their app because they had it for an older version phone, so they're getting that updated. So I wanted to let everybody know that.
All right, thank you, sir. Council, we have any questions on the item?
Hey, have y'all had any reports of odd usage or issues around that? I know sometimes there's some technical issues with these types of deployments.
Yes, we have had some reports of that, and we have addressed those, and then we've also got with Master Meter. It appears that it is a program glitch, and they're aware of it, and they're working on it, and we're aware of it. So when someone lets us know, we take care of it.
Like the water usage or just the application?
Actually, it shows up on the water usage, like when they put the meter in the very first day when it gets a reading, it's like it's maybe 3 times higher than what would normally be. And so we have been notified of that, and we're taking care of it.
And so folks wonder and probably see me on my phone. I got a bill here. I'm looking. Someone sent it to me. Said that they had a usage of like 220,000 gallons. And, I mean, they got a pretty hefty bill to go along with it. So that I didn't get a chance to get to you on that one, Anthony. So, but afterwards, we can probably look at that one.
Yes, sir. If you'll let me know, I mean, like I say, if they'll just contact us, let us know. We are aware that is going on. And so hopefully it's going to be fixed here pretty soon.
All good. And that way folks watching can know to call in and not get too worried about it too. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, we have any further questions? Okay, floor is open. It's open for motion.
I make a motion to approve pay request number 6 to Schneider Electric.
I second.
Have a motion made by Councilmember Sproul, second by Councilmember Redfern. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll now close item 4 and move on to item 5. Item 5 is consider resolution 2024-17 adopting the prohibited technology policy for the city of Mount Pleasant.
Good evening, Council. In June of last year, the Texas legislature enacted Senate Bill 1893, which prohibited the use of TikTok and certain other social media applications on devices owned or leased by the government entities, and it requires the removal of these social media applications from those devices. Governor Abbott requires all government agencies to adopt a prohibited technology policy no later than November the 20th of this year. This policy applies to all city employees, elected officials, contractors, paid or unpaid interns, and any other users of the city's networks. Again, this applies to owned or leased devices by the city. Personal devices, cell phones, laptops, iPads, will be restricted from using the city's network only, and they will be prohibited from accessing these social media sites. There are no anticipated costs associated by this policy. You have a copy of the resolution and the policy in your packet, and staff recommends council approve the resolution adopting the prohibited technologies policy. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have, if I can.
All right, floor is open for questions.
So just to make sure I heard you right, understanding that you're not supposed to use it on a government device, or I'm assuming under our network, if someone's tied in, how are we preventing that? Are we actually blocking that on our network, so if anyone does try to access it, it doesn't allow them, or tracking it for that matter?
That's what I understand. They will be prohibited from accessing our network.
Awesome, thanks.
Have any further questions? Floor is open for a motion. Thank you, sure.
I make a motion that regarding TikTok and the city network.
Do I have a second?
I'll second consideration to vote on resolution 2024-17 adopting a prohibited technology policy for the city of Mount Pleasant.
All right, have a motion made by Councilmember Redfern, second by Councilmember Hickman. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda. We'll now move on to item 6. Item 6 is to consider a request from Scott Hart on behalf of Christus Health for approval of preliminary plat for Anderson Town Crossing Addition Phase 1, Lot 1, a 12.875 acre tract of land located north of Tankersley Road, east of County Road 2010, and west of US Highway 271. Lynn?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, we have 3 planning cases that will be coming concurrently for the same project, beginning with the preliminary plat and the site plan, and then the final plat for the Anderson Town Crossing Addition Phase 1, Lot 1, which is the Christus Health project. It is part of a large plan development along I-30. However, it is a single lot development for the purpose of an emergency and specialty hospital clinic development on 12.875 acres. It did go before a planning and zoning on October the 8th, and then it was pulled from last council's agenda due to some confusion on the tax dot approval for driveways. However, it is felt that this project can go forward as long as there are conditions in place on those driveways going forward before building permits. This is the depiction of the area in blue is the approximate location of the Christus property. As you can see, that Tankersley Road borders it on the south side, and Rotan touches it on the north, and you can kind of see the location of Tankersley Lake. Anderson Town Crossing project will be to the west of this. It's not depicted on this, but it is part of a planned development zoning that came through last year. So this is the overall view of that planned development that was approved by council in 2024. I guess it was in March. That was amended to allow the site that is shown, which is Christus' site, to have a hospital use because it wasn't envisioned originally in 2023. So they were removed from the October 15th agenda. However, we did determine that it wasn't going to be substantial changes. They would be minor driveway relocations that would come forward that would be required before a building permit could go forward. And so there's Anderson Parkway and Rotan Road that would be accessed for that overall development, but it would not affect necessarily this overall site for Christus. This is the preliminary plat, so this is the first case, and I would propose that I go through the entire presentation, and then the vote could occur in 3 stages at the end. So this is the preliminary plat of the property, and it basically shows the outline and some of the improvements and where it falls, and it's the beginning of the development process. Our code requires a preliminary plat. And so we can go forward with that, but there's nothing in code that says that it can't be followed by a final plat at the same meeting. So I took the liberty to try and condense that for the applicant so they can move forward with their development. The second step is a site plan approval, and because this is a plan development to zoning, it is required to come forward to you. It incorporates the landscape and the building, parking, street standards for the overall development, and it does require that the engineering plans be approved, shows the drainage and entrances, and it does require TxDOT approval, which is pending of the driveways. This is the overall site plan. You can see the parking areas are shown. There are drainage and detention areas shown. There are 2 driveways to Tankersley are shown. if they need to be revised slightly and moved, in various configurations, it will not affect the overall site plan of the hospital, itself, which is somewhere around 35,000 square feet. This is their landscape plan. Of course, they're required to also show, the landscaping and how that is gonna, fall on the site. You can see, the, helipad on the right-hand side, that they're planning to put in as well. These are, front and side elevations of the proposed, project when it's completed. And another, view that shows the parking. And finally, the third case is the final plat, and I apologize that, I should say FP, not FPP. This is the overall final plat that will be recorded at the courthouse. Again, it has additional information and signature blocks on it, but it is essentially identical to the preliminary plat with, the addition of a few more elements for that recordation process. So we did review this with staff and the Development Review Committee, and that, the approval was given for the civil engineering construction plans for the overall site. That is required for the site plan and final plat approval, by this body. And so the, addition would be, our recommendation that their condition that TxDOT approval of the access to the project would be obtained, before the building permit could be issued, and that the applicant site improvements that they are conducting on site remain at their own risk. So, they are working with Anderson Town Center developers and TxDOT to get that final approval, and it's expected in time for them not to be held up on their development. So they did recommend approval at the October 8th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you for that, Lynn. Council, do we have any questions on these items? Just, be aware, should the presentation cover items 6, 7, 8? So if we have any questions on those, you can go ahead and ask them at this time.
Mayor, do we have legal counsel on? Because I was actually serving on the board for planning and zoning at that time.
Yes.
Lee, I did vote on this for the planning and zoning, so I'm not sure where that stands right now, if I can vote on this again in council.
Yes, you can proceed to vote on it again on behalf of council.
I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do we have any further questions? All right, floor is open for a motion on this item.
We're gonna vote on, we can vote on all three together? No?
Well, the presentation was for those items. Well, I'll read each one. We're voting on that item 6 right now, and then I'll read 7 and.
I make a motion to vote on item 6, PP 2024-5, for Christus approval on the preliminary plat in Anderson Town Crossing.
I second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Hagman, second by Councilmember Redfern. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right, vote is unanimous. We'll go ahead and close that one. We'll move to item 7, which is the consider a request from Scott Hart on behalf of Christus Health for approval of the PD site plan for the Christus Health project in Anderson Town Crossing Development on Lot 1, Phase 1. Floor is open.
I make a motion that we accept item number 7, SP-2024-09 for the Christus Health approval for the PD site plan.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Redfern, second by Councilmember Sproul. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. Our next item is item 8, consider a request from Scott Hart on behalf of Christus Health for approval of final plat for Anderson Town Crossing Addition Phase 1, Lot 1, a 12.875 acre tract of land located north of Tankersley Road and east of County Road 2010 and west of US Highway 271. Floor is open.
I make a motion to approve FP 2024-5 on behalf of Scott Hart.
I second the motion.
I have a motion made by Councilmember Sproul, second by Councilmember Hagman. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Ream, a quick question for you. So, the resolution would include, all those resolutions would include, sorry to bring it up now, but would include that it's contingent upon CDOT, that's the old world that I live in, Colorado and California. TxDOT's approval of those driveways and that they continue on their own risk. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, all three of those are contingent on that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Let me see if that's clear in the paperwork that's submitted. Okay,
Technically, the TxDOT approval would not be required for the preliminary plat to move forward, but on the other two stages, it is required.
okay. Mayor, I would recommend that you clarify the vote on each of those, the two that are required for the TxDOT.
That's 7 and 8, correct?
Although, I mean, Miss Barrett, I mean, the way that you've presented it to council is that it is contingent on that. Is that correct? All right. No, I think you're fine, Mayor. I think it's clear that it's, for example, on the first item, it's contingent upon the approval. And so what you've approved is what has been provided by city staff. So I think you're good.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, we have anything further? All right, thank you, ma'am. All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and close item 8 and move on now to item 9. Item 9 is staff presentation and council discussion on whether to proceed with proposed city ordinance authorizing the issuance of license to private individuals, authorizing the construction of boathouses, docks, piers, and certain other improvements on Lake Tankersley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Lynn Barnett will give us a presentation here shortly, but I wanted to kind of introduce this item. So this is an item, so I started in first part of June, and this is something that had been worked on by staff in coordination or cooperation with some of the landowners and some of the real estate people, and there was an interest to allow boathouses on Lake Tankersley. And our decision had been worked on, some drafts of information had been done, but we hadn't gone over it with the new council. And so we asked tonight as a discussion item to bring it forward so that you can be informed of what's been worked on, what the conversation's been, and then what we would look for is just direction, whether to just continue, and then we would bring back the actual ordinance and lease agreements in a following meeting. And so I just wanted to introduce that, and Lynn's done a lot of work on this, and appreciate that. But again, this is a discussion item tonight, so certainly we can hear members of the public who have comments in regards to it, and then inform City Council of what it is, and then we just again ask for direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nahal. We can go ahead and proceed.
So, this is a more relaxed kind of item, and it does cover quite a bit of history, at the lake. So, there is a proposal to allow, the city to issue licenses, there. And it was, a discussion with our legal team as well. There is a current ordinance that regulates all the reservoirs in this city now, including Tankersley Lake, that requires anyone erecting any a structure along the lake or the bank in the take line area, and I'll show that in a minute, to have a permit. However, it explicitly prohibits boathouses. We're going to go over some of the definitions so you can kind of understand what the kind of proposal is and the issues. The license details themselves that are proposed. Again, we had to have a starting point, and then some proposed ordinance provisions that you may be interested in moving forward with. So the word take line is not intuitive for a lot of people, and what it refers to. This is a depiction of the lake. In orange is the actual boundary of the lake, but the area inside the lake, which is the water and some of the land along the edges, is what is considered the take line. So the elevations around the lakes that were established by a Corps of Engineers, there's a design flood elevation. And then the take line area is the distance between what the normal pool or the normal water level is and the designed flood elevation, where that land actually falls. And so as you can see, the hash along the shoreline, it varies. And it's not like, 20 feet or 50 feet. It depends on the topography of the property. That's city property, and it is not private property. And so the actual private property line is the orange line. That's the property that the individual property owner owns, even though it may look like they own to the water. Technically that is city property, and that's the area we're talking about. It can be an area for a licensed area. So we had looked at kind of some ideas on how to go about allowing some of the structures to be regulated. And so it was proposed that a license agreement would be a term of 5 years, and it would cover provisions that would state, of course, the water level's not constant and it's subject to change, that the cities wouldn't be responsible for any flooding or damages to any of the structures that were erected, that the license would transfer to new owners when they've sold the property. It would allow the owner to claim the use of their designated take line area improvements when they purchase a property, or the ones that are currently there, as well as erect new ones. They could reclaim any lost property if it was eroded along the lake, and be able to build it back. And it would allow owners to construct various structures, including boathouses, slips, docks, walkways, those kind of common items that you see. It would prohibit using water from the lake by the property owners. It would prohibit storage, dumping, and use of hazardous chemicals, which I will say is a provision of the current ordinance that regulates reservoirs generally. The license can be terminated if there are natural disasters or if it's not renewed. And it would have to comply with all the other city ordinances, including permitting. So here are some depictions of some of the items that these aren't coming from our lake, but these are just these are the sort of items with boat slips and boathouses that would be allowed to be constructed, stationary platforms, and even considered a seawall that would stop erosion. As well as more elaborate structures and walkways. So to establish the license areas, we proposed that the applicant who wanted to do that would first supply the lot survey that would show the take line area. And then the license boundary agreement would establish what those boundaries geography of the lake. That would change and have to be negotiated with each one of the properties, because some would be narrow, some would be wide. You wouldn't want this a property owner to erect a dock that blocked his neighbor's water, for example. And so it would have to be staff negotiated, and we would mediate issues, any instances of disagreement between neighboring property owners on where that boundary should be. And then the final appeal to that boundary, any boundary disputes, would be to the city's Board of Adjustment for final ruling. Then goes forward, the permit could be applied for this specific structure that the property owner was wanting to erect. That would also require neighboring owner agreement, or the review process I just described would also be in effect. So we had a starting point on fees. For the license fees, that would be $1,000 initial fee for each property owner, and then a $600 fee that's billed annually with the 5-year renewal that I spoke of. Then for building permits, they would be on a scale similar to these. These fees do capture staff time for our permitting folks, our building official, to go through the review, issuing the permit, and then of course any of these. We did that there would not be a charge for the seawall, and no license would be required either, because those improvements would be in the best interest of the lake. Some additional kind of details that a boathouse, what they are, it'd be a roof structure that was at the end of a fixed pier, and it would have some scale for the size of the lake, so 2 spaces with a minimum and maximum height of between 16 and 21 feet, and area, it would be is above the water line at the normal pool elevation. It would have to be at least 10 feet from the side property line of the, and then it could be 10 feet off the seawall and no longer the water. And the size on those boat slips would be 12 by 20. So a dock jack would be anchored to the ground and would be planks kind of running in a horizontal pattern. It could be up to 50% covered, and again with the same heights and setbacks that were in effect for the boathouse. Fixed piers are in an I, L, or T shape. Again, would have the similar kind of dimensions, and this would be no more than 6 feet in width. As you can see, the scale is compatible with the size of Lake Tankersley, and a walkway would be allowed from the property line to the shoreline. It would need to be on ground level and be of a compatible material for the existing properties, and then again would need to be 10 feet from the side property lines of the neighbors with a maximum width of 5 feet. Again, the boat slip has a definition. We would not allow dredging through this process. It would be a separate permit only when necessary. And as I mentioned, no lake water use, and then defines what a seawall is. So that concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, the building official's here too, so we'll attempt to answer them.
All right. Being that this is a discussion, and it's open not only to council, but also to the public, and now I'll leave the floor open for questioning at this time. You may come up, Ms. Debbie.
Can you go back to the screen that shows all the charges on that? Okay, bring it up. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you right now, I've got a real problem with that, because that reminds me of what was said a couple of years in here by someone else this morning. This is the first I've heard of this. I did not know this coming up tonight, but I think anytime you're going to charge people a license fee $1,000 and then come back and charge them $600 a year annually, every year, in most cases, these people have been taking care of this land for years. So I can see a license fee, a one-time fee, or a set $5 a year fee, but there's no way that I think this is right.
Good morning, good evening, council. I'm actually the one that came up with the fee schedule, and so I'll just give you some details behind the scenes. So the licensing fee, they do the same thing similar on Cypress and Bob Sandlin. They call it leasable fees or leasable area. And on Lake Cypress, depending on where you are, a cove is about $200 a year, and main water is about $1,000 a year. Lake Bob Sandlin, they do it based on square footage, and it's about 30 cents a square foot for their yearly leasing fee. And they say the average boathouse is 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. So if you take 2,500 square feet, it's still going to be about 700 to 750. And I know our lake's not as big as theirs, and so that's why I put it right about 600. Obviously, it can go lower. That was just where I fell in regards to what the other lakes around us were doing.
I would like you to look into Glass Club Lake. Glass Club Lake. It's in Naples, Texas, between Omaha and Naples. It's a small lake. It's been around since the 20s or the 30s. And so what Debbie is saying, which I do agree with, on my directions, on the south end of Tankersley are older homes that have been there for a long, long time. On the north side, you've got the newer homes and the newer divisions. So my question is that the people who've been living there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, are they going to be grandfathered in if they already have a dock, if they already have this stuff? Are they going to have to now, if they've lived there for, seriously, Tankersley on the south side, it's a lot of people have lived there for a long, long time. How are we going to say $1,000 for something they built years ago? So I want you to look at Glass Club Lake, and some of you might think of some other private lakes or some smaller lakes in our area that have similar fees, but when I think of Bob Sandlin and Lake Cypress, I mean, that's new build, and I think that's a little different than an older lake. That's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out and find out.
Just to add on that, I mean, even if you have a pre-existing fee structure, right, and then any new builds, obviously the $1,000 to get the permit, and I mean, I'm not saying 600 is right or wrong, but you know, if you encourage too many, you know, the next step in conversations can be about what kind of boats you can have on there, right? Because if we get a lot of boathouses, then I know there's folks in the audience, you know, I'm not trying to talk about boats tonight, but that's the next thing, yeah, I can see coming up.
Yeah, also too, the annual licensing fee would cover, so with more improvements going out there, code enforcement does have to get on a boat and drive around the lake. And so we've spent about a week of 3 man hours because we have to have the fire department drive the boat out there. Someone from the fire department has to drive us around the lake. And then we've taken pictures and we've addressed them all so we can have, you know, examples of what's currently out there. So that licensing fee too would also help cover code and fire department's time to go out there and monitor the lake.
And has there been any consideration around the dam? Because I know at some point it would probably need maintenance if it doesn't already. I'm not sure where it is on the schedule. Not expecting to have an answer on that tonight, but you know, just something to consider. You know, a rainy day fund kind of thought.
It's a shallow lake, and so when you look at some of those boathouses appear to be for larger boats. back at Glass Club Lake, you can only have a small ski boat. And when you ski, literally, and this is where a lot of young people learn to ski, as you go round and round and round. They might have a party barge or a sailboat, but they're not the big boats. You might have some people in a cove that might do some fishing in their fish boat with, but it's not, it's just a small, quiet. And they also have regulations as far as when they can start running their boats in the morning and also in the evening. So the people that live at Tankersley, they're used to this lifestyle. And again, I just want to make sure that all the thought is put into it. And I don't know, are there any people that are here from Tankersley? I would love to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on this.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I know the mayor was gonna open up the public here in a minute, but unless you answer first. So I do wanna say, John, thank you for discussing, how we came up those numbers. We discussed it. There's no real, we try to, as John said, try to compare it to what we see in lakes around us. And I do think that it's important that, these are benefits. This is a city-owned lake. It's city-owned property. And so they're gonna be using that. But if things go awry, let's say, it becomes in need of repair, there's always going to be follow-up things that code enforcement's going to have to do. We are going to have to keep an eye on this. And so there were expenses that we didn't think should be absorbed by the general fund, shall we say. So we do think there is some cost, and that's why we are here to kind of get some feedback from the public and from you on these type of issues. So appreciate it.
Colin, come up. I'd like to hear from you.
I've been standing outside. I didn't want to interrupt, but then I was watching y'all say anybody have property on the lake want to come and talk. But we're about done remodeling a house on the lake that we're fixing to move into in the next few weeks. And so I just want to say I appreciate the city trying to come up with a mechanism to allow for boathouses and piers and those things. That I realize that it is a city-owned lake. And I appreciate the opportunity to have those things there because I think that's why people live at the lake. They want to enjoy the water. They want to enjoy the lake. And so, all the, I won't get into the minutia of the fees and all that stuff, but what the main point I want to make is I appreciate the city trying to put something together that allows for these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, do we have anyone else that would like to come up this time?
My understanding of, back up. My name's Colin Cowan. I live at 784 County Road 1123. I am a property owner on Lake Tankersley, and I've been out there about 13 years now. My understanding on the fee structure and what was proposed on the website, Bob Sandlin has a fee structure on their boathouses. I think it's 15 cents a square foot for the boathouse. The property that is owned by Lake Bob Sandlin, there is not a fee to that property for the owner. But there's an understanding that there's a setback there and that anything that they do on that property has to be permitted and dealt with accordingly. Lake Cypress is a completely different animal. The majority, and maybe all of Lake Cypress, is leasehold property. So when you buy a house at Lake Cypress, you sign a 99-year lease with that property. You don't own the property. So you lease the property. It's a long-term lease. It's relatively cheap. I don't know if they've gone up on those fees in the past few years or not, but at one point it was like minimal charge. But they did that so that the lake could protect the property around it and dictate what goes in and out of that area. So those are two very different situations than what we have at Tankersley. So I do think the fee structure is very high, considering how other lakes deal with that. I do have a concern about the no water usage from the lake. There are multiple homeowners out there that have a lake-drawn sprinkler system that was installed multiple years ago and that we pull water from the lake. So if you amend that, then homeowners like myself who've spent the money on their sprinkler system to maintain their property and take care of it, are you gonna make us cut our sprinklers off, and are we gonna be out the money that we spent on that investment? Again, going to Bob Sandlin, they charge $150 per pump per property. And that's full year's use to irrigate their grounds or whatever. And of course, there would be provisions if the city dictates that somebody is abusing the system or taking advantage of the system. I can see there being some enforcement in those areas. But those are two observations on the fee structure I wanted to bring up. So I have a pretty lengthy presentation. I'm going to go through it as fast as I possibly can, and I apologize in advance. But there's a lot of important issues on Lake Tankersley that need to be addressed before we make a step toward this fee structure, encouraging boat houses, that type of thing. So again, I appreciate the time to speak to you tonight. Tonight, you were discussing some rules, regulations, and possible permitting that will affect this lake, the landowners, and the city as a landowner around the lake, including your dam and spillway. I've been addressing the city council about Lake Tankersley since 2017. At that time, we were having an issue with air-driven boats coming out at the lake at night, and loud. You've seen them on TV, those big air-driven boats. And they would drive up through the park and back down in the water, and the city actually passed an ordinance that no air-driven boats would be allowed on the lake. In 2020, I addressed the council at the time of annexation. I have followed up with the previous council via email and discussions, and pertaining to my concerns about the boat traffic on this lake to both private landowners and the city itself. As we all know, there have been some changes on the council since that time. But during this meeting, and I'll refer you to the meeting of 10/20 of 20. It is on the YouTube. You can go back and watch the full meeting. But during that meeting, the council and city manager at that time addressed concerns about Tankersley, addressed concerns about boat traffic on Tankersley. Not only did they imply, but they said that they weren't going to allow boat houses on Tankersley because of what could come from that. And then they made comments about the possibility of making Tankersley a no-wake lake. And they were doing that because they were concerned about the shallowness of the lake in multiple areas. They were concerned about hazards that are in the lake. There are steel pipes that stick up. There are things in that lake that nobody knows are there unless you are familiar with the lake in a low time. If you go out there at full capacity, somebody could ski over a metal pipe very easily. So at that time, the council made it clear that there would be no lake houses, no boat houses on the lake, and due to the issues that I've brought up. Lake Tankersley is a small lake owned by the city of Mount Pleasant. It was one time a water source for the city, and my understanding is that it could be used again as a water source if need be. So in the type of catastrophic drought or some type of accident at Bob Sandlin, if an emergency circumstance took place, there would be access to that lake. Per the internet, I found that Tankersley is approximately 254 to 275 acres, depending on what source you look at. The physical shape of Tankersley and the configuration of the lake and the depth of the overall lake really affects the usable portions of that lake. My first concern is wakes created by boats when operated in spaces that are not wide enough nor deep enough to dissipate the wakes are a hazard to other boaters, kayakers, fishermen, property, structures, and dams and spillways. Wakes are produced by any boat or motorcraft that is moving at a speed and creating a wave behind it. So in researching this before I came to speak to you tonight, I have watched multiple presentations, I have read multiple papers and multiple articles about wake management. And I'm telling you, it's very exciting stuff. So if you're bored, you can jump off that. You have multiple angles in this thing. Wake boats say there's absolutely no damage, and they've got all sorts of studies to prove it. And then you have environmentalists that are on the far extreme. As I was looking for sources to present to you, I tried to pick somebody that was in the middle of the road that had no fiscal interest in this issue. I wanted to pick somebody that I could give you information on that I felt was solid information. And in doing that, I found a guy named Alex Ray who has worked for the Federal Land Management Agency and for 15 years, and his specialty is focusing on where recreation and ecology, aquatic resources meet. His job is to figure out the best purpose and the best use of a water resource. He is in the middle. He is trying to protect recreational rights and aquatic resources, and as you can imagine, there's multiple biased sources out there. In his research, he evaluated the impacts of wake and wake boats, and I realized that those are bigger boats, like you mentioned earlier, on the environment and on the aquatic resources. I understand that the data I'm presenting is focused on wake boats, but this data, we can draw some very safe conclusions about boat traffic in general, and when it comes to this particular lake. When you reduce the size of the lake, both depth and distance, from the recommendation he makes in his findings, it's easy to see that even smaller, shallower bodies of water need more restrictions and protection. As an effort to be judicious with your time, I'm going to cruise through this as fast as I can, so just bear with me. In his research, to prevent damage of a lake ecologically, i.e. disturbing the sediment on the bottom, deoxygenation of the water, and overall creating unhealthy lakes for wildlife and fisheries, the body of water for wake boats should be a minimum of 30 foot deep. Please remember that number, 30 feet. His second data point was that a wake boat needs 1,000 feet to dissipate the wake before the wake crashes into something and has enough energy to cause damage. This 1,000 feet also extends to the safety of other boaters, kayakers, swimmers. In his data, he stated that 1,000 feet would be ideal in order to deal with the above issues, but that in certain locations, if they had the proper depth and the proper structure, you could get down to 800 feet. I found in my research several other studies that had minimum distances of 600 feet and 20-foot depths. So all of those numbers play into what I want to point out tonight. The actual physical characteristics of Lake Tankersley decrease the size of usable surface footage for motorized activity substantially when looking at the actual surface area of the lake. I've provided several copies for y'all. The first page that you have is a Google map. And again, I'm not technologically savvy to do it, so I did it by hand. But the lines drawn across that map show the distances between shoreline to shoreline in multiple areas across the lake. If you go through there, you will see how small, how narrow the majority of Lake Tankersley is. On October 27th, 24, I recorded the depths on this lake, and that's the second diagram that I gave you that has numbers written all around the lake. To be fair, I tried to stay 20-25 yards off the shore. I tried to take a semi-consistent reading all the way around, and I recorded those numbers. Now, those are not perfectly on spot, but they are a very accurate representation of the depth of the lake. I intentionally stayed away from the shore so you could see how the overall shallowness of Lake Tankersley is. The reason I spent this time giving you these maps and to provide some reference points is this lake is very important to your discussions tonight. If you will look at the two maps, the majority of this lake falls under the 1,000-foot distance, and the overwhelming majority of the lake is smaller than that. Keep in mind, just for reference, Bob Sandlin, if you look on Google Maps and measure from shore to shore, is over 4,000 feet. And we've got areas on this lake that are 390, 400, 500, 600. There are only 4 areas on that map that measure over 1,000 feet. In the areas that do measure 1,000 feet or more, the total footage across from lake to lake, from shore to shore. So if a boat needs 1,000-foot setback, if you look at your map and it's got 1,000 feet on there, a boat can't travel through that line, intersect that line, and be 1,000 feet from this shore or this shore. They're going to be 500 feet if they're on the dead middle. So they don't have the clearance to dissipate the wakes before they hit the shore. Lake Cypress has boating regulations that require 200 feet from the dam and spillway. They also require 200 feet from private property and shorelines. If you apply that 200 feet to the diagram I gave you, your maximum usage of our lake gets smaller and smaller, especially in those areas. The other important aspect of these measurements is when you consider depth. If you look at the map with the depths recorded on it, the deepest water I could find on Sunday was 19 foot, and that was in the center of the lake in front of the spillway. Directly in front of the dam measured 6 to 13 foot, and it dropped to the center of the lake, which ranged from 17 to 19. No location on this lake measured 30 foot, and no location measured 20 foot on the day I was out there. As noted in the diagram, if you look at where the dam and the spillway are, if you go directly across the lake, you're going to see a kind of a boot-shaped peninsula that sticks out. Just off of that peninsula, there's a sandbar that measured 2 feet deep. There's another one just shy of that, and then it goes back to 6 feet. If you look at the southeastern portion of the lake, the maximum depth in the center of that is 7 to 8 feet, and it drastically drops off or drastically shallows as it goes to the shoreline. The north end of the lake, which is the largest portion of water, measured 3 to 5 feet deep in most areas. Some of these measurements were taken 170 yards off the shoreline. In multiple areas on the north end of the lake, there were sections that were 2 feet or less. This is where the area that I believe that the question of boathouse was raised because of the development and the sale of lots. I don't know how deep the water needs to be in order to have a functioning boathouse, but I know for years of working at Sandlin and Cypress, the depth of the boathouse is always important to a person buying that property, and they don't want a 4-foot depth. There was a mention of dredging. Is the city going to allow dredging? Who's going to permit that? Is the Corps going to be involved in that? What are we going to disturb on the bottom of Tankersley if we start dredging? Minerals, pollutants, any of those things that could affect the health of the lake. Keep in mind that when shallow deaths do occur, it becomes a safety issue for boaters, and it severely cuts into the usable portion, as I've said. Secondly, it affects the size of the boat that negatively affects the lake. The shallower the lake, the smaller the boat needs to be, the smaller the motor can be, and to the point where a wave runner can effectively negatively affect the lake because of the wake that it creates going over 2 foot of depth. Again, I reiterate, the majority of Tankersley at this time is natural shorelines. You have some retaining walls built, you have some older ones that are failing and crumbling. The north end of the lake has a new retaining wall that is failing already. The beauty of a natural shoreline is it improves the fishery, it's better for wildlife, it's better for the overall health of the lake. So if we increase the boat traffic on Tankersley, you're basically going to require landowners to start building more and more retaining walls, which is going to negatively affect the lake as far as an ecological reason. All right, the last thing that I want to cover, and this is where you guys as a council, this is where the rubber meets the road for y'all, because with the council turnover that we've had in the past little bit, there was a lot of issues with people being upset about spending money, not being judicious with the city money. All of those things impacted the council that sits before me tonight. And so this is where the taxpayer dollars come into play. So the next section after my 2 little diagrams in there is the TCEQ dam safety section, Lake Tankersley Dam inspection. I filed a Freedom of Information Act with TCEQ, and they emailed me this report. The packet is in the information. It's provided by TCEQ. TCEQ is in control of all public dams in the state of Texas, and they provide an inspection every 5 years. On July 28, 2022, they performed the last inspection on Lake Tankersley. In the summary findings on page 1, the dam was found to be in overall poor condition due to overgrown trees and vegetation along the downstream slope that only allowed for a limited inspection of the slope, as well as failed sections of the spillway. Other areas of concern included displaced joints, cracking of the upstream slope protection, cracks along the face of the spillway, movement of the spillway inlet, and tree growth in the downstream channel. A revised EAP, which is Emergency Action Plan, needs to be submitted to the TCEQ Dam Safety for review. Then the TCEQ provides some history of the dam, with its last work and repairs being made in 1984. The 2008 inspection is referred to in this section, and it states that some trees were cut down, some stumps were left, but other deficiencies noted included open joints, settlement of concrete, flowing weep holes with sediment, undermining the Silton Basin, and the seepage near the pump station. Now, this is a redacted report that I gave you, so you'll notice an area in there that's blacked out. The reason it's blacked out is because it deals with safety concerns downstream in case of a failure of the spillway or the dam. And post 9/11 world, that section became information that could be possibly used in a terrorist situation, so they redact what the downstream damage is, or potential is. But I will say this, it is in this report that the hazard potential classification is high. Per TCEQ, dams assigned with a high hazard potential classification are those where failure or misoperation will probably cause the loss of human life, as well as economic loss, environmental damage, and disruption of highways and other services. The report states that in 2018, the inspection considered the dam in fair condition, but in 22, it had been downgraded to poor. The findings continue on about the issues of both the dam and the spillway, and then if you turn to the last pages of that report, you will find pictures. The last 2 pages of pictures are pictures that I took on the 27th of the dam and spillway from the lake. And you will see the large cracks, you will see the separation, the sinking of the spillway, the cracking in it, and you can actually see hollowed out area behind that concrete apron. I would encourage you to read through that entire report, especially the recommendations and the conclusion, and the fact that TCEQ has rescheduled that inspection on a 2-year cycle instead of a 5-year. So it's obvious to me in that report that this dam is a concern to them and the spillway is a concern to them. I don't believe docks, structures, and piers are detrimental to the lake. I do, however, strongly feel it's confirmed that boat traffic and weight-producing capable boat traffic is a serious issue for Lake Tankersley and for the city itself. My thought and recommendation would be to designate Lake Tankersley as a no-wake lake. This is something that was brought up by leadership in 2020 when the lake was being annexed. They knew the hazards, the condition of the dam and the spillway, and they were looking at addressing long-term management of this asset. Multiple lakes throughout Texas have no wake restrictions. Lady Bird Johnson Lake in Austin, Lake Granbury, Bernie City Lake, Marine Creek Lake in Fort Worth is a 250-acre, very similar size, lake that is a no-wake lake. White Rock Lake, Dallas, which if you've ever been there, is a gorgeous lake, and people use it. It's got running trails, and they paddleboard, and they sail on it, and all these things. That lake actually limits motor size to 10.5 horsepower in order to cut down on the wake and damage. And then the Brazos River Authority has large portions of its waterways where there are no wake areas due to the clearances, depth, and safety issues. In my opinion, it's in the city's interest, and it's important to know that much of the recreational traffic on this lake spends hours doing circles in front of your dam and spillway because it's the deepest part of the lake. But if you look at the diagram, it's a very small circle. And in doing these circles, they cannot maintain proper distances between the spillway and private property owners. Every wake that hits that dam and spillway creates a furthering issue. Every wave helps push soil behind the concrete apron in the spillway, furthering to the poor condition and increasing the cost of repair and placement for the city. Every wake weakens the structure and increases a potential for a catastrophic event. North Carolina and Georgia never expected the damage from a single storm that they've experienced the past few months. With our changing weather patterns and unpredictability, this is a real world concern because our dam is not in good shape. Our spillway is not in good shape. So in closing, I have serious concerns with the current boat traffic that's on the lake. I have watched the erosion around the lake increase substantially in my years of living there, and I've witnessed an increase in boat traffic and increase in boat sizes over the years. We all know that common sense is not that common. And in turn, we have people who don't think about, don't worry about, don't care about the damage that their activities cause. They already violate boating laws. They do not manage their wakes. They do not practice common sense or concern for property, boaters, swimmers, as it is. If boat traffic is not regulated, restricted, and used in order to protect the city lake and those downstream from the lake, including our highways, railways, sewage treatment facilities, and most of all, the potential loss of life, then entertaining the idea of boat houses, which are going to multiply the issues addressed tonight, makes no sense. A boathouse today seems like a simple thing. You got a guy that's got common sense. He puts a small fishing boat in. He goes out on the weekends. He trolls around and he fishes. What happens when that property owner sells it to the young family that buys a wake setter that can produce a 3.5-foot wave, and they go up and down that lake 4 or 5 times a day? The damage, we'll never get that back. Every pass powered by a boat sloughing soil off the banks increases the sedimentation of the lake. Having lived out there 13 years, I have watched boats pulling skiers over areas that are 2 feet deep. I have heard boats hit sandbars, and luckily nobody was hurt or killed, but I have seen it happen multiple times. As I stated earlier, the precedent for making Tankersley a no-wake lake is set and established in many other public lakes in the state of Texas. I think it's an opportunity for the council to do something that would be a boon for the city of Mount Pleasant. There are many people, families who enjoy non-wake activities. This would be a draw for the community to encourage tourism and visitors to the area to enjoy a natural resource and know that they are going to be safe on the lake. Secondly, and importantly, because of the proximity to Bob Sandlin and Cypress, those who wish to recreate in wake-producing activities have access to areas that are large enough and safe enough for that. It is a 6-mile drive from the Tankersley boat ramp to the Freshwater District boat ramp at Bob Sandlin. I want to encourage all of you today, as you discuss this, as you begin to take action on this, I want to encourage you to take action to protect city property. I want you to take action to protect taxpayer dollars in Mount Pleasant, and over the course of the life of this lake, lots of tax dollars. I want you to take action to protect the downstream interests that are vital to our community and protecting the dam and spillway. Lake Tankersley is an asset. If you take the steps now to protect it, prevent it from further deterioration along the shorelines, prevent further sedimentation of power boats, prevent it from even more repairs and tax dollars being spent on the dam and spillway, this lake will be an asset for years to come. You have an asset that needs to be protected, and people need to be safe when using the lake. I know that's a lot of information, and I'm sorry to take up as much time as I did. I hope it's beneficial to this council and the leadership and in the decision-making process with your sworn role to manage the resources of the city of Mount Pleasant. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Colin, I appreciate the report. I took a good amount of notes, and I may reach out to you some other time just to make sure I don't have any questions there.
Colin, you gave your name and your address, but can you tell people what you do for a living?
I don't know if that's good advertisement tonight or not. That's probably bad things, Kelly. I'm a real estate inspector. I've been in Mount Pleasant since 2001. My wife was raised here. I was raised in the big city of Dangerfield, and we moved back here in 2001 because we missed the beauty of East Texas, and that's why we're here.
Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm. We have anyone else at this time that would like to speak on the item? Lance, I need you to press that button. We can't hear you. You need to hold that button down in the center there, and right there in the middle.
Down?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, my name's Lance Henson. I'm a lifelong resident of Titus County. I'm pretty sure my grandparents sold part of their land that created Tankersley. So, I've been in and on Tankersley forever. It's always been sort of a hidden part of Mount Pleasant. Few people know where it is and what it was for. I know they don't pull water out of it anymore, so it more or less stays full. But as far as the wakes or those, I don't know how serious of a concern it is. I think Cypress was a no wake lake at one time. I don't think it is anymore. I think they had a lot of problems with that. Tankersley to me was just always a sort of a fun place. We used to paddle around on it, and just goof off. We never really had any problems. The city has sort of grown out to it. And there does need to be some regulations, but it's not a water source now. It's sort of a family event. And you can already put a slip out there and have a boat. The difference is, you can't leave your boat there. So you need to be able to leave it there where you can, I don't know, do whatever you're going to. Most people don't have any kind of boat slip, or there's no boat houses, I don't think. Maybe some that might qualify a little bit on that. But I don't, you know, of course, and you know, my brother and I inherited some land. We do have some lots on the lake. I don't really have a problem with boat houses in general. People having a boat to do whatever they want to. It seems like the people that live out there sort of take care of themselves. I would be amazed to think that there were, you know, 1,000 boats a year, you know, out there running up and down it, that are not living on that lake. Because I think, as he said, you know, a lot easier to go to Sandlin or Cypress if you want just to get out there with, you know, 100 other boats. Tankersley, real small, real homey kind of thing. But I think, just from my perspective, it's a really nice lake. People take care of it themselves. Does need a little regulation, just like everything else. You know, the city took it into the city limits, so there's some issues about land between what we own versus the water line. So, you know, all those things need to be addressed. As far as the cost, you know, we hope it's lower, you know, so something to consider. You know, I don't think either way you're gonna keep people from building a boathouse if they wanted it, but you know, I think it's okay if they have one. So I know there's sort of a dark cloud there a little bit. Tankersley's not that way. You know, it's you know, it's not a you know, a danger to the community. So it's not used much, but it's a really nice place. And I don't think boat houses are going to create some problem that, you know, the community in general, you know, can't handle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henson, for your time. We have anyone else at this time?
Just one quick comment. You know, first, appreciate Mr. Cowan for bringing his comments and information. That was all great information. Appreciate him spending all the time he took to put that together. The only thought I would have to add is I think what we're considering here tonight is access. And so, you know, boathouses do give somebody who owns property there easier access. Having a roof over a boat helps you protect your investment. But, and I'm not saying that I don't agree at some level that there could be some regulations, but I just want to remind everybody, I think the conversation today is about access. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have anyone else at this time? Council, floor is open if you have anything. All righty. We'll go ahead and get ready to close the discussion on it. I guess where we're at now is trying to get information or direction on where we want to go with this council.
So if I'll just jump in. So as the mayor said, and you know, we inherited this conversation from obviously years that it has been discussed, and so we wanted to bring it forward to say, is this something that seems simple to proceed with the criteria we're looking at? And certainly we got some, I got some excellent information that I learned tonight that certainly causes complications in my mind that you have to consider as part of this. So it's kind of, it's up to council. I think, I would say to you as I listen to this and listen to a number of aspects that I think are worthy of some review and research, that I honestly would say there's a lot of things going on in the city right now. And so my comment would be, is the city council wants to proceed as we talked about access, which is what we're talking about. We can proceed with that, you know, tweak the numbers and so forth. But if we really want to take a look at all the boat safety and all those other issues, I think that's something I actually would put on your priority list as we talk about all the different projects we're working on and see where that lies as far as us really doing that. Because I think some of those concerns are valid that were raised, and I'm not a boater, so I want to say I'm very knowledgeable in rules, laws, and so forth. But I do think there is certainly more research that can be done, but I'd like to hear your input on that.
I mean, I believe I've seen this report before. I mean, the only thing that really raises an eyebrow is, just the potential condition of the dam, just based on kind of what I read through while Mr. Cowan was talking. I mean, I think, re-reviewing the schedule and doing a little more research based on what Councilwoman Kelly Redfern had said. But, yeah, it's almost like if you do one, you almost need to kind of look at it as a holistic picture. Because once you do a boat, if there's no or a boathouse, there's no regulation around boats, then you end up with a big wakeboard boat or a wake boat or too many of them. So it's probably need to keep the discussion open, but put it against everything else we have for the time being. I don't know where it would land based on some of the other higher items we got.
I love Lake Tankersley and that whole area out there. And I love watching the growth that's happening. I do think, because you do have, and I'm looking out at some of the people that live at Tankersley, I know that you've got the older area and then you've got the newer area. And so I think that I would like to have further conversations about this. I do think there probably needs to be some regulations to be placed. I mean, Mr. Cowan brought up a lot of information. I've known it's shallow. I mean, I've known that my whole life, that it's very shallow. I did not know exactly how shallow it was. I think this information's good, and I think we need to continue looking at it. So I would like to make the suggestion that we do talk about this, but I think with what we've got going on right now, and I think what our city manager gave us a priority as far as we're looking at water, we're looking at their EDC, there's quite a few major projects that we have. I think this I'd like to, but it's like further down, if that makes sense. I would like us to talk about it, but I see it as, like on our priority list further down, but I do want us to work on it. Does that make sense?
Aren't there already some plans underway to do some of these repairs on the dam and spillway, and that already been in the budget, and then isn't that being addressed, some of that stuff right now?
So we've had a few things to work on, and we have had a discussion. We've had some folks looking at actually one of our other dams, and so I can just say to you, listening to this, we have a couple dams that are of concern here, and honestly, we've kind of been looking at making our financial situation be better and more sustainable. So we have not got there, other than we've had some conversations with some engineers about potential repairs or other things. And so that will come to you, but it's probably going to be early next year before we start talking about these additional costs that would be required to do that. I think that these reports have been, from the best of my knowledge, and again, it's only having one meeting on it, but these are things that have been occurring, these types of reports, for years, and not just 2 years or 3 years, for years. And so there will be a time that the city will absolutely have to address this. And I think when we talk about prioritization, we talk about 5-year plans, that's when we have to start, we have to start setting aside some money to do some work here on these dams, because there's more than just this one that is of concern. So if I could just say, so I think City Council, what I would like to suggest is that we will be going through your priorities. We will add this particular item to the project, as we will also talk about the dams on there. And then we're just going to have to prioritize them and see where we can get on these items. I think what I would say from learning from the conversations today is you want to address it all. And not necessarily a dam, that's very costly, but you do, I wasn't aware how shallow it was, so I learned a whole lot of things and there's some suggestions I think definitely need to be looked at. And so I would suggest we put it on there. We'll look at those, but I think even the fact that something was raised that I don't know for sure, but I know there's a current ordinance, and I think that ordinance says that you aren't allowed to take water out of the lake. And so I think maybe we're just gonna go back for a minute here and see what's actually there today on the books, and then we'll kind of walk our way probably in steps, and we'll try to set a schedule and kind of a calendar. Where do we want to go with this? Is this 3 months out? You know, in 3 months we want to have this conversation, 6 months here. And so that we don't just, it just disappears and then it comes back like this has for 7, 8 times. We'll try to actually kind of give a strategic plan. Wherever you put this on the list, we'll be able to say, these are the priorities, here's the schedule on these, and we'll put this item somewhere in that list.
I agree, and I would like to have it, like I said, not in this calendar year, but in the next year, because we do have growth going on out there. There's a lot of building, especially new houses that are on, and I think my directions are right, isn't it the north side? The north. So I think that is something we probably need to address because of the growth that's going on out there.
One last thing, and just as we're looking at fee schedules or anything with bodies of water, right, I hear multiple dams we're looking at. I mean, I think we need to try to include, just from a planning perspective, moving forward, or, you know, even with the city planner, you know, consider dam infrastructure or anything like that, just so if something does happen at any point, we're at least, you know, have half the money or some of the money, and we don't having to take another bond out or borrow a bunch of money or take away from something else that was already planned, just as a thought.
Are there any grants ever available for this sort of rehab and maintenance of public bodies of water?
I don't know that. I will. That's something we certainly will talk about. There is we have used someone in the past that has assisted us in these reports that we get, and so again, I've had one meeting, but we'll follow up on it.
Okay. All right, well, the agenda item is asking, you know, whether or not to proceed with the proposed city ordinance to authorize the issuance of license, and I just want to understand you guys' direction. Is it something that you want to table and move on to something? And then I'll need a motion for that. We just really honestly need to have you guys direct.
Yeah, I misunderstood. So, yeah, I'll make a motion to table it for now and to put it on a priority list. Sounds like there's a few other things we need to be looking at along with it.
And I second that.
All right, we have a motion to table by Councilmember Hagman, second by Councilmember Bradford. Madam Secretary, record the vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. This item will be tabled to a later date. We'll close item 9 and now move on to item 10, which is considering awarding street materials bid. Garrett?
Good evening, council. My name is Garrett Houston. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Mount Pleasant. This is item 10, consider awarding street materials bid number 6, 2024. So this is a part of our long-term purchasing policy, and what we do is we go out and we lock in rates for the next 3 years. So this allows us to operate and know kind of where to budget and how to proceed with jobs and all that. So staff's recommendation is to approve the low bid and local vendors. So all the vendors are local to Mount Pleasant, and we have attached the bid tabulation, and the highlighted ones are the ones who will be awarded those bids. And I'm here for any questions y'all have.
All right, thank you, Garrett. Council, we have any questions at this time?
So how many bid on, I mean, I know we're just talking materials here, but just so I understand your diagram, did all of these people bid on all of the material that's listed, or how was that bid out, or they responded regardless, you know, either way?
So we have a list of vendors we send out, and people who are interested in those certain
items, usually is how it goes. It gets kind of specialized when you have different kinds of materials where you only have a few asphalt providers and certain amount of people do field sand, and so they kind of bid in their specialty.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
All right, any further questions? Floor is open for a motion.
I make a motion, to accept the street materials bid number 6-2024.
Second.
A motion made by Councilmember Redfern, second by Councilmember Sproul. Madam Secretary, record a vote.
Aye.
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 The vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item. Thank you, Gary. Our next item, which is item 11, which is our city manager's report. Mr. Nahar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your time tonight. I just have a couple items. I'll do the good ones first. So for election, I hope everybody got a chance to vote today, and we look forward to seeing what happens. And I don't know, the future council member probably sitting back there on edge, wondering if she won the uncontested vote tonight. So look forward to seeing you up here at the next meeting. I think I just wanted to say, Garrett sent me a note that we had a great event out of the Parks Department for the Halloween. Would you say 2,000 to 3,000 people came by, and those are just good things, you know, community and city partnerships, just trying to make sure that it's not all about roads and bridges and dams and those type of things, but we do also participate in our community in that way. I did want to say that something I just learned yesterday is that we had a tornado watch come forward, is that I think we've got an app that the city would put out that's available to residents of the city that's very directly related to city people, and so we just want to start advertising that. I don't have the information for you, so I wanted to just say that that's something we're going to pursue as quickly as we can, get that advertised, get it to the chambers of commerce, and get to many groups as we can, so that you've got a direct notice when we get something like a tornado watch. And we've worked on that. I think we've only got like 400 people signed up right now, and so we're going to market that and try to get that out, because it's something extremely important. I think we see it with all the disasters that you never know, and so we want to make sure we provide that service. Lastly, not good news for the city. So every year the rating agencies take a look at our financial records and evaluate our bond rating. And so this past couple of weeks here and late last week, the Moody's, who do ratings for us, they published a reduction, downgrade of the city's bond ratings, and that happens to be the second one in 2 years. We were A2 in December of 23, and we are or A2, we went from A2 to A3 in December of 23, and now we are downgraded to Baa1. So still investment grade, and really the only part of that really is a concern would be if we're going out to borrow money when it comes to it costing the city additional funding. But what it does tell you is their perspective of how we are handling our finances as a city. And so I want to say what they were looking at is the audit that was done in that finished fiscal year 2023, and it was presented to City Council in 2024. I think it was June, soon after I got here. And I wanted to just highlight a couple things, kind of, so as we look at recovering, honestly, from some of these financial issues. I want to start with the first one that I have a chance to talk to them. So what Moody's does, they'll call you, they'll tell you, we looked at the audit, this is what we're thinking. They actually were thinking about downgrading us 2 places, 2 notches. And what we were able to do is, because the city council made a couple, not popular decisions certainly, but necessary decisions. One is the ability to use the $4 million or the $3 million that we were able to take that were that were given to the city for CARES, and the government said, hey, you can use it for whatever purpose. We put it directly into the reserve account, because one of the big issues here, and I'll talk about it on the slide in just a minute, is that the reserves were dwindled down in all areas of the city to below what even the city policies are, but also their threshold is higher than even what the city's is when they look at this. So they looked at that as a very big problem. They looked at the fact that we're in a transition stage when it comes to my position and the finance director position. We don't have one at this time, and those just give uncertainty to the rating agencies. Those are the two big ones, and I want to go ahead and put that slide back up. I wanted to show you, because this is something that we're going to have to tackle over more than 1 year in order to get to this place. And so this is from the audit that was done for fiscal year ending September 30, 2023. And we showed this back when the audit came through. And one of the big things we looked at is why parentheses around these numbers. So for instance, if you look in the street fund, it's negative $293,000. If you actually look over at the general fund, it's 1.2 million, but that was only like 7%, and even the city policy is that it should be around 18%. They look at that, it should be more like 20. So when you look at the general fund and what happened this year, which is why we were able, I think, to notch it up, only go down one notch, is because the city council put that money in reserves in the savings account, which put it well above 20%. When Moody's looks at this, they look at all of your bottom line balances and they compare them to what your revenues actually look like. And so, do you have another slide? Is there another slide on there? So you look at that negative, and there's this negative balance, and it's called the Park Improvement Fund. So what they do is they combine all of your end balances and all of your revenue coming in, and they say, where are you? And so when they look at this and say your reserves are only at like 10%, even though we boosted the general fund to over 20, you have to look at all funds. And so these are funds that are here, which I'm not even sure why. We have to figure out why we've got negative balances in these areas. But they need to be eliminated and they need to build up. We have to look at all the funds and build them up so that we've got reserves in all of them, so that when the ratings come annually, we show that we have made improvements here. And we have. And utilities is another one that actually was less than what they evaluate to a pretty significant level. And the city council had to make a very decision to vote for a 34% increase in your utility rates. And that's never popular, but actually, had the city council not done that, they may have dropped us 2 notches, because that shows that the council is willing to take the steps necessary to fix the problem. I didn't actually look at this as much as I should have when we first started looking at the budgets, but this is something that I would say is a 2 or 3 year plan, and your staff and finance department have to come up with a plan on how do we erase this, how do we get these numbers back to positive numbers overall. And so this is why the rating went down. It's why the city council, and we had to recommend reductions in labor and reductions in the actual budget that we just approved. And so what I'm saying to you is we're going to have to be really conservative when it comes to spending money, and be very prioritize what we do moving forward as a city, because it's not just the Moody's bond rating, it's just the state of your financial situation as an overall city, and it just needs to be healthier. It just has to be healthier, and this council, we will have to make some tough decisions when we look at priorities and how we fund things in the days ahead. Again, it's bad news. We're going to have to find, and I know your council's got out there looking for a city manager. We're looking for a finance director, so we have to find those people that are going to stabilize our organization, so that they can look at this and say, stabilize, you're doing what you need to do. You know, they'll show you improvements even if you're showing your plan. If you don't show that you've got a plan, then they're going to look at, for instance, this audit, and there's just not much you can do, honestly, to say that you shouldn't do that. We had hoped, we tried. And so we'll continue working that, but we do have to come up with a plan, City Council, with you that says, here's how we're gonna address it long-term. So not good news, not a good way to end our conversation tonight. There are a lot of good things going on. I think I would say there are some projects coming forward to council for future developments. And so that's all good. Growth will help. I mean, reductions in budgets are certainly hold the line to the levels of service that are not going to be improving. You're going to have to hold the line as a city to say we've got to increase these reserves before we start spending a whole lot of money on anything. So with that, Mayor, Council, happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nahal. Council, we have any further questions?
Well, food might cheer you up. I bumped into Kent Ford today in town. He works at Decron here out in Industrial. Friday, the chamber and them are hosting the Burger Day. He said, since you're going to city council meeting tonight, please invite everybody to come. And he said, I'm also giving plant tours. That's a very interesting place to see. So if anybody's got a chance on Friday to enjoy that and see, and they are in the midst of an expansion in that plant. He said they would probably add 25 jobs. They've got their architectural design just about complete. So he said, I'd like to, invite everybody. He said, so please use your opportunity at the council meeting tonight, Sherry, to pass the word for an invitation Friday for Burgers Chambers with the chamber. And he said, and the main thing is if you'd like to see the plan, it's very interesting to see, and I'm very happy to hear. I asked him how many employees are there now. He said roughly 60. And he said they're underway to expand the facility and add 25 new jobs.
Thank you for that information, Mayor, we appreciate it. All right, at this time, we'll go ahead and close the city manager's report, and we'll move on. Pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I'd like to. Mayor, I would like to recommend to you that we go back to items 6, 7, and 8. Is the development director still present?
Yes.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Ms. Barrett, is it clear that the property owner is requesting the approval of those items subject to the TxDOT's approval of the driveway? Have they agreed to that?
TxDOT approval of the driveway is a requirement for any building permit.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing hard there, sorry.
Okay.
It would predicate that there access to the site. That's what on for both Christus and ATC, and so
You're not holding it, Ms. Lynn.
conditional. There, it's conditional to the approval that was given tonight, that there be TxDOT approval for access to the Christus site. Yes, ma'am, and they could not move forward without it.
So, Mayor, I don't believe it's crystal clear that the way the motions were made, that it's clear that the council's approval is subject to the approval by TxDOT of the driveway. So I recommend that you go back at first, that we just have a motion to reconsider the items that were made on items 6, 7, and 8, and then the council vote, assuming that a motion to reconsider passes on those items, that you then have council make motions on each of those items again, subject to with the condition that that it would be approved with the condition that the driveway is approved by TxDOT. That's what that's what their recommendation is. And I think you just need to clarify that in the record. So
thank you, Attorney Ream. I think your question was, is Christus aware of these conditions? And they were made aware that, and asked if they wanted us to proceed with these conditions. So certainly, that was discussed with them. And I think just to recap, so the motion that you're going to have is going to be approve these, site plans with the condition that TxDOT, that the building permit will not be issued until TxDOT, approves their access.
So first, actually, you need a motion to reconsider the motions that were previously made on 6, 7, and 8. If that motion passes, then make a motion for each of those items with the condition for the approval of the driveway by TxDOT.
All right, thank you, Lee. Council, you've heard the same thing I have. We'll open the floor for that motion.
Yeah, make a motion to reopen on the agenda, item 6, 7, and 8 regarding Christus, plat approval.
I second.
All right, a motion made by Councilmember Hagman, second by Councilmember Redfern. Madam Secretary, record a vote.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. Now that those items will be reconsidered, we'll go back to item 6, 7, and 8 for consideration with the request, with the condition. Floor is open.
All right, I make a motion to approve on condition that a permit will not be released until TxDOT is approved on PP 2024-05, which is item 6 on the agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, a motion made by Councilmember Hagman, second by Councilmember Sproul. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right, and the vote is unanimous. Now we'll move on back to item 7, with the floor being open for the motion and change.
I make a motion that we consider the request for Christus Health for the approval of site plan in Anderson Town Crossing Development, Lot 1, Phase 1, SP-2024-09, contingent or subject to the approval of TxDOT on the driveways.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Redfern, second by Councilmember Hagman. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 The vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item and move on to item 8. Item 8, the consider request from Scott Hart on behalf of Christus Health for approval on the final plat with those conditions. Floor will be open for motion.
I make a motion to approve FP 2024-05 with the condition and contingent on TxDOT approval for their driveway needs.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion made by Councilmember Sproul, second by Councilmember Redfern. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Just one thing, can you say final plat instead of driveway?
Did you say final plat?
My question was, did you say final plat or driveway?
I said approval FP, final plat 2024-5, contingent on TxDOT approval for their driveways. Did I not word that correctly?
No, that is their final plat. Are you doing number 8? Yes. So instead of driveway, just say final plat for me.
I amend my motion verbiage. I vote to approve final plat 2024-05. Do we need contingencies on that? contingent on text dot approval.
All right,
Of the driveway.
of the drive.
Right.
Of the driveway.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, let's second that.
Excuse me. All right, thank you. We have a motion made by Councilmember Spruill, second by Councilmember Hagman. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll go ahead and close that item on the agenda. All right, we're gonna get ready to go here into executive sessions again pursuant to Open Meetings Act. Lee, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council will recess into executive session to discuss the following. Will be discussion of a possible settlement, cause number 43346, Louise and Alma Lozano's appeal of Special Commissioner's Award pending the 76th District Court of Titus County. Also, be a discussion of possible resolution of lease negotiations relating to the city's lease of 418 North Madison, Mount Pleasant, Texas. Also, personal matters, discuss the appointment, employment evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. And discussion of possible council appointees, discussion of possible settlements, claims against KSA Engineers Incorporated concerning 2 raw water transfer pumps and motor used at Bob Sandlin Water Treatment Plant. At this time, the council will be going into executive session. One more thing, go ahead.
Just want to say one thing is that we do have 2 items, so it's likely that 2 of these items we're going to discuss in closed session will come back and for action in a public meeting. And my apologies, City Council, I'm glad you laughed about it a little bit. I should have caught that on that contingent, conditioned, and so forth, so thank you.
right, in accordance with the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the City Council will now reconvene into the regular session to consider action. Item 12 is to consider and possible action on settlement of claims against KSA Engineers, INC, concerning 2 raw water transfer pumps and motors used at Bob Sandlin Water Treatment Plant. Lee?
Mayor, this is the settlement that has been reached and discussed previously concerning the replacement of 2 raw water transfer pumps at the Bob Sandlin Water Treatment Plant. Basically, as outlined in the settlement agreement that's included in the packet, the KSA will be paying for and or actually installing these 2 new pumps that are specified in the settlement agreement. In exchange for that, the city is agreeing that they're going to release claims with regard to that matter against KSA. And it's very clear that, the parties have an ongoing relationship, so you're not releasing any other claims. But basically, that's what is being agreed to. KSA is going to provide a warranty for the electrical workmanship, and then it's going to take commercially reasonable efforts to transfer the warranty, a 12-month manufacturer's warranty covering the pumps and motors. And so we have negotiated the terms with their council, and they have signed off on it, and it's ready for the city's approval.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Council, we have any questions?
May I just add one? Sorry, I stepped in a couple minutes late. I think it's just important, soon after I started here, one of the issues that, again, this council raised to me as a concern was a water treatment plant that for years had not met capacity when it was built. And so city council prioritized this to say, let's get that water treatment plant at capacity by solving this through this settlement, and it's at no cost to the city that this is going to be settled, and the Bob Sandlin water treatment plant will be able to pump at capacity as it was designed back 11 years ago. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that information, Mr. Nyhoff. We certainly appreciate it. Okay, with that being said, council, if we have no questions, then we'll open the floor for a motion on this item.
I make a motion, accept the settlement claim against KSA Engineers concerning the 2 raw transfer pumps and motors used at Bob Sandlin Water Treatment Plant.
Second the motion.
All right, we have a motion made by Councilmember Redfern, second by Councilmember Hagman. Madam Secretary, report a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda. Our next item would be to consider and possible action accepting terms of agreement with G&M LLC relating to city's lease at 418 North Madison, Mount Pleasant, Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as we, soon after I got here and as we were working through the budget and looking at ways to reduce costs, the Assistant City Manager Webster indicated that we had a lease for the building, which is Kitty Corner at 418 North Madison. It was a 5-year term lease that I think that the intent was for expansion of some of the office space. There was some very crowded quarters within City Hall, and the intent was to move some folks over there. Well, we actually have available offices now and did not feel that that was the solution. So again, it was a 5-year lease. We saw no need for it in the next 3 years, and so instead of paying lease for the next 3 years at $3,000 a month, we are recommending and have discussed this and created a settlement agreement with the owners of this property to settle this. I think what we would end up paying is about $102,000 if we were to continue this lease through the end in 2027. And so with this, we're going to save approximately $60,000 in rental payments down the road. And so we recommend approval of this settlement.
All right, thank you, sir. Council, we have any questions? All right, floor is open for a motion on this item.
Make a motion, to follow the settlement, to release us from our lease obligation, with G&M LLC, for the property at 418 North Madison in Mount Pleasant, Texas.
I second.
All right, we have a motion made by Councilmember Hagman, second by Councilmember Redfern. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 All right, that vote is unanimous. That will conclude, and as we close that item, at this time, we'll be adjourned. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Lee, for guiding us through.
Thank you.
All right, we are adjourned.